Welcome. Now we're going to learn how to conjugate verbs into the conditional tense. Personally, I think that the conditional tense is one of the easiest tenses to master in Spanish, not only due to the verb conjugation endings, but also due to the uses. Now, you would use the conditional tense when you would say you would do something in English. Now, when you say you would do something, that's usually accompanied by some kind of excuse to why you were unable to do whatever you were trying to do. Now, one of the most common words in order to demonstrate that there's an excuse coming is the word but, and that is clarified as pero en español. So, first of all, we need to get our verb conjugations on our chart. So, the conditional tense uses the same verb conjugations as ER and IR verbs in the imperfect tense. So we have ia, ias, ia, íamos, and ian. Remember, we're skipping the vosotros for this point in time. Now, in order to demonstrate the conjugations of the conditional tense, we're going to use the word hablar. You probably recognize this when we used the present verb tense endings. Hablar means to talk or to speak. So therefore, in previous verb conjugations, we usually always have to take off the AR, the ER, or the IR. However, in the conditional tense, this changes. We leave the AR, ER, and IR on to keep it an unconjugated verb and just add the endings after it. So, if we want to say I would talk or I would speak, we start off with yo and then hablaría. If I want to say you talk or you speak, tú hablarías. If I want to say he or she talks or he or she speaks, él, ella, hablaría. If I want to say we talk or we speak, nosotros hablaríamos. Or they talk or they speak, ellos, ellas, hablarían. Now, if you notice here, hablaría is the same for the yo and the he or she form. Therefore, when you're using the conditional tense, it's very important that you put the yo or the el or ella in front of hablaría. Otherwise, the reader or the listener is really going to have to pay attention to the context in order to determine who exactly you're talking about. So if you just put the yo or the el or ella beforehand, it just makes it a lot more clear. Now, just like all verbs in the Spanish, there are some irregulars in the conditional tense. They are the same irregulars as the future tense, and there are 9 of them. I'm going to break them down and try to classify them into categories in order to help you just a little bit more. For the first 5 irregular verbs, which are tener, salir, venir, poner, and poder, what you're going to do is, in addition to actually having to take off the ER or the IR ending, as we're so accustomed to with other verb tenses, but you'll also have to add the letter D. So in order to conjugate tener into the yo form, I would have, first we need the yo, now we have tener. First thing we're going to do, cross off the ER. We're left with ten. We're going to add the D, so yo tendría. Or how about we would go out? Nosotros. Okay, we have salir. You're going to cross off the IR, left with sal, add the D, and the íamos, saldríamos. Now, for the next irregular is querer. And just like the first group, you still have to take off the ER endings. So in order to conjugate this verb, we're going to take that off. However, this time you're not going to add a D. This time you're going to add an R. And here's why. If we were to just leave it like this, that's the imperfect conjugation for querer. And we don't want the imperfect, we want the conditional. So what they do is they just add on another R. Quería. The next word that we're going to have is saber. Now, saber follows the same principles as the tener, salir, venir, poner, and poder. But instead of adding a D, they're going to add a B. So you're going to cross off the ER, add the B. So if we want to say you would know, to sabrías. Next set of irregulars is going to be hacer and decir. Now, these ones are going to be the most irregulars out of all these other groups. Not only are you going to have to take off the ER and the IR like you've been doing, but you're going to have to change the C to an R. And for decir, you're going to be changing a vowel. So, if we want to say they would do or they would make for hacer, we start off with ellos. Take off the ER, change the C to an R. So, ellos harían. Then with decir, if we want to say she would say, ella diría. Notice that the E changes to an I, in addition to the C changing to an R and taking off the IR ending. And that is the 4 categories for irregular conditional tense verbs. Now, let's do a couple of sentence examples in order to help us out in a real life situation. First sentence that we're going to do is they would make the beds, but they are lazy. So, like I said, the conditional is when you would do something. So they would make the beds, but there's the excuse, they are lazy. So, first off, we need they. We look at our subject pronouns, we know that ellos is they. So ellos. Now make. We know hacer is to do or to make. So therefore, we know that we have to take off the ER, change the C to an R, and then add our ending. So we look back up here at the endings for the conditional tense, and ellos is in the bottom right. Therefore, we need the bottom right. So we get ellos harían las camas. And then here's where our excuse comes in. Pero they are lazy. Son perezosos. Now, if you put ellos in front of the son, that's fine. It's just not needed because there's no change in the subject. So if you just leave it out, they know that you're still talking about the ellos. Okay, the next sentence that we want to do is I would give her the ring, and here comes our excuse, but I don't have it. So, first off, we're going to need I, which we know up here from our subject pronouns is yo. The verb give comes from dar. So we need to figure out, first of all, is it irregular? Dar is not on our list, therefore it's going to be a regular conditional tense verb. So therefore, we need to look back up at our verb conjugations. We see yo's in the top left, iya's in the top left. So therefore, we add iya to the end of dar. Yo daría. El anillo a ella. Pero, there's our excuse. No lo tengo. Now, we had to use a couple of pronouns in here, and that's what this lo comes from. So if you're a little confused of what that is, go check out the video about direct and indirect object pronouns. So, yo daría el anillo a ella, pero no lo tengo. And that'd be our sentence. Last one we would like to do is, he would go out, but he doesn't have any money. So, in order to do this one, first of all, we need he. We know el is he. Go out, we look back up at our irregular verbs, and we know salir is to leave or to go out, which we know it's irregular. It's the one with we take off the IR ending and add a D. So, el saldría, pero no tiene ningún dinero. He would go out, but he doesn't have any money. So that is how you'll use the conditional tense with present tense verbs. However, you can also use the conditional tense with another verb tense instead of the present. That verb tense is called the imperfect subjunctive. Now, you would use this in like an if-then clause. If you're a little confused about what the imperfect subjunctive is and you haven't reached Spanish 4 yet, then you probably should stop the video now and come back to this at a later time, because this is upper level Spanish. So for example, if I had the money, I would buy a ticket to Spain. So, the way you use this with the imperfect subjunctive, and first of all, we want to have the if. Now we know if is C without the accent, because C with the accent would be yes. So, C, now we need I had, si yo tuviera el dinero, yo compraría un boleto a España. So we have the phrase, if I had the money, okay, and then our excuse. That's the excuse right there. If I had the money, I would buy a ticket to Spain. That is how you would kind of use it with the imperfect subjunctive. And once again, if the imperfect subjunctive is confusing you right now, then hold off and wait till you get to the upper levels of Spanish, and they'll teach you how to use that correctly.